Dino Crisis fans, it looks like our long wait is finally over. Capcom is finally giving us the sequel that we've been asking for. Wait.
That's not a new Dino Crisis, babe. You're wrong.
No, that's
not
what is this? Exoprimal?
It's not.
What is an Exoprimal?
Not Dino
Why
Crisis.
is there an Exoprimal?
Not Dino Crisis.
How is it that Capcom finally pulled the lever marked make a dinosaur video game? And something other than a new Dino Crisis is being made. I mean, it kind of feels like a cruel bait and switch. Along with my fellow long-suffering fans of Dino Crisis,
Is there really that many?
There's like 4 of us. We're in a support group. I kind of feel a bit misled. I know it's unfair to think that every dinosaur-based video game has to be a new Dino Crisis, okay? I'm going to be realistic here. But come on. I mean, this is from Capcom. You know, they are the studio made Dino Crisis games. It has random dinosaurs in it for no real good reason. It has a red-headed protagonist with a haircut that bears a very strong resemblance to the main character from Dino Crisis. There's even a former producer from Dino Crisis on the Exoprimal team. I mean, I can't help but feel that this new game is willing to give me a few pieces of what I'm looking for from a Dino Crisis, sequel or reboot or whatever you want it to be, anything but Exoprimal. But it's just enough to remind me that what I was really asking for is clearly not happening.
If anything, it may have actually moved further away because it seems unlikely that a studio that hasn't made any futuristic dinosaur games in a long time is going to suddenly make 2.
Probably not. And I don't intend to throw Capcom completely under the bus here. I mean, it's possible that the company was truly unaware of the gaming public's interest in a new entry in the Dino Crisis series. I mean, there's a very vocal minority group of us here. Maybe the developers believe that this new Exoprimal game is close enough to the source material and gamers would accept it in place of the game that we really wanted. And maybe in time, perhaps we will. Not right now. But either way, this game is not the Dino Crisis game that we've been asking and waiting for. It may look a little like a Dino Crisis game. It has some elements in common with it, dinos and apparently some kind of crisis. And it may even be inspired by this iconic franchise. But what we asked Capcom for, that's clearly not being created. And it leaves me to wonder, maybe our requests were simply lost in translation or misinterpreted. Or maybe something far worse. They are being answered in a way that is designed to intentionally misdirect us to accept a counterfeit answer.
The truth is that our desire to have the Dino Crisis game that we have been asking for may have been heard by ears other than those who have an interest in making that specific game. And now they are taking that request and designing something close enough to just satisfy us.
Now, if I squint hard enough, I might be able to trick myself into thinking it really is Dino Crisis. Just ignore when the title comes up. It has a different name. And if Exoprimal turns out to be good enough, maybe I'll forget about the Dino Crisis game that I was originally asking for in the first place.
We are more prone to Dino Crisis substitutions in our lives than we may care to admit. Most of us have prayed to the Lord for some very specific requests, but all too often we accept the very first answer maybe that comes, a response that may not have come from Him and does not have our best interests at heart.
I mean, think about it. We pray about maybe a specific path in life, a relationship, job, large decision. But in our desire to move towards the response we'd prefer, we take the very first one that comes along, or the one that maybe sounds close enough to feel right. I mean, most of my largest missteps in life came from what I thought was the result of me mishearing God. Turns out, I never misheard anything at all.
I heard something, very clearly. Only it wasn't the Lord providing me with an answer. It was a counterfeit response that tapped into what I wanted to hear and when I wanted to hear it, instead of listening for what God was truly saying to me.
Here's the painful reality that I've had to accept. Many times I am the villain of my own story. Scooby-Doo pulls off the mask, there I am. I'm underneath it. I'm trying to figure out who sabotaged my life, and I was just opening myself up to deception the whole time. I walked outside of the Lord's will for my life. I ignored His direction that didn't align with what I wanted to hear. And then once I walked far enough away from His sheltering arms, I'd raise my hands to the heavens and ask, why am I out here all alone in the pouring rain? Well, it's because I believed the lies deep down. I wanted to believe them. They told me what I wanted to hear. Just as James pointed out in his epistle, God does not tempt us. It is our own desire for those Dino Crises that we have been waiting for that can easily result in settling for whatever exoprimal choice that is currently being offered to us.
Our Father only has good gifts for his children, and these gifts may not always be the ones we had in mind. His answer to our prayer requires physical patience and spiritual discernment, and they may not always be the first response that arrives.
Or the fifth. The Lord is not a rewarder of those who casually seek him, so we can validate our specifically requested answers to prayer. He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him and are authentically looking for guidance on how we can please and serve him, not those who seek to use his power to gratify ourselves and our own personal desires. In each of these Dino Crisis conundrums that we find ourselves dealing with in life, we have to make a choice. Do we accept that exoprimal substitute because it's close enough? Just because there's a lot of similarities between the two doesn't mean they have anything to do with each other. And perhaps we've already received the answer to our Dino Crisis question. It's just not the response we wanted. Maybe it's just not going to happen. Could be for the best.
The Lord has only the best in mind for each of us, and falling in love with what we would prefer for him to do instead of what he actually intends to do has been a problem ever since Christ came as the Messiah we needed, but not the Messiah we wanted.
It can be easy to mistake what we think God is telling us with what we want to hear if we surround ourselves with the wrong influences and listen to the wrong voices. If we are determined to get the wrong answer to the question, it will find a way to be presented to us. It is only by surrendering ourselves to the will of Christ, taking the entirety of the Lord's word in context, and being willing to submit to his potentially undesirable answer, that we, along with Jesus, can truly say, not my will, but yours be done.